This is an exclusive preview of the first all-electric Audi, the Audi e-tron. Yes, it's confirmed that it will have this name. Well, the French will have a little problem with that. Check it out what it means in French. But other than that, it will be e-tron all over the world, and we will tell you here in this preview about the exterior, the basic dimensions, the technology behind it, the interior, which is probably the most interesting part, and we'll also take a first drive along with this new electric vehicle, how it performs there, also from the noise insulation, because that's also one of the key elements. So let's dig deeper into exterior, interior and the driving here in Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! Well, with this special paint you can see it is still somewhat a prototype. It's not the very final vehicle, therefore it's the very exclusive preview here for you today. But we can see the basic shapes and also tell you soon more of the basic dimensions. The single frame Audi grille is basically showing a resemblance to the other big Audi models, but here we have just a little bit more cover because we don't need so much cooling for those electric motors and stuff. The battery will be placed below the vehicle, all over the car basically, not in the very front, not in the very rear, but in the middle part to keep the center of gravity low. And interesting also that those headlights have this tech or robot look a little bit, so a little futuristic approach. Other than that, this car will not be that significantly different than the normal combustion engine cars from Audi, and it's also one of the strategy to align it also with the rest of the model lineup, not to be so special in comparison to other electric vehicle approaches. 4.90 m or 16'1" is the total length. Well, this is basically full-size SUV size for European purposes at least, and comparable also with the upper class models from Audi. If you think about A6, A7, Q7 or A8, so this will basically be somewhat the same segment, also the same as the Jaguar I-Pace, which is a little bit shorter, or the Tesla Model X, which approximately has the the same size. Has an e-tron badge right there. How it will be final, we don't know yet, but it will probably be pretty close. Those ones here, 21-inch rims. They have also this rather streamlined look. Don't look too aggressive. And this is a world premiere here for a series production car. Those ones are the virtual mirrors, so there is no real mirror. It's a camera right there, then giving you an image in the inside. We will take a look at that on the interior, and also when we drive the car, this is very interesting. We got some crossover style roof rails, and you can see it has some resemblance with the Audi Q7, maybe a little bit lower, something like a Q7 crossover, or a little bit put higher A6 all-road. I would say there's something in between exactly. Long wheelbase also, that you can have a lot of room on the interior, and of course will look even more different when we have the final paint. You can see here we also have those crossover wheel arches. So what do you think so far? The rear has basically a typical hatch style. Defining design element will be this light strip that goes all over from right to left, or left to right, however you want to define it. And of course the most important figures about this vehicle is that the real driving range is supposed to be about 400 kilometers. Also 400 horsepower power output with 2 electric motors, one on the front, one on the rear axle. And the battery capacity, also according to the range for the size of that vehicle, is 95 kilowatt hours. And that's again directly in this segment where also the 2 main competitors are. Of course, we're really looking forward how this real answer from the classic industry to the Tesla will perform also on the road. So let's now get inside. First of all, we also have the option of soft touch close here. or soft close, not soft touch close. So you can have this one, you know, that you don't have to slam the doors. Magic. And here again, up close, the mirrors, the virtual mirror. You can still get a standard mirror if you like. This is an option. More streamlined, a little bit smaller, and you will see it again also on the interior. There it is. You can see this. Hello. I'm not sure how it is. How much zoomed in I am or not. Like this? Something like that. Now you can see me. So the angle will also be changed actually. So depending on the driving situation, how fast you're driving, or if you're driving reverse, or some soft touch here on the inside of the doors. Then Alcantara used. You can see also the ambient lighting. There will be 30 colors available. Again, great build quality, also with clicking buttons here. Some space for bigger bottles here, but you can see it has this curve. Not sure how it will apply on bigger bottles right there effectively. Then if we take the first relook on the interior, you see some resemblance to the new bigger Audi models. They are also on the market, A6, A7, Q8 also as well now. Digital cockpit is standard, 12.3 inch. Then you have the A8 steering wheel. Probably there will also be a different steering wheel if you maybe pick a sportier S-Line or something. And the seats, those are those multi-contour seats we also know from the other Audi sedans. So they look pretty comfortable. The only thing is just that at the moment it's not confirmed if there will be any alternative to animal skin. And since this should be a sustainable electric vehicle, it's of course a big drawback that they don't offer it. Jaguar with the I-Pace offers, for example, fabric seats as base. Tesla does not offer leather anymore at all. So just a high-grade leatherette, but Audi still does the very, very conservative way, which is not fitting to the rest of this vehicle. But comfort-wise, from the seat form, they're pretty good. I can also get inside and give it a test. So, and you enter it like a crossover vehicle, not exactly as a big, high full-size SUV. That's something also, you know, with the Tesla Model X is doing. The Tesla Model X is also not such a high SUV. This is basically a big crossover vehicle. It's a very good, comfortable seating position. It's already upright, but not super command driving upright like in a Q7. So again, something between A6 and Q7, I would say. Headroom, I'm 1.86 m or 6'1". Plenty of headroom left here with a nice bright ceiling, so you get a good quality impression, and you don't have the feeling that you would be in a special electric vehicle. You could also be in any other high class or upper class Audi vehicle. That's also something they wanted to achieve. You just have different gauges here. For example, you have a range gauge electric one, which is somewhat a little bit different than the normal one you would be used to. And we have also a different control mechanism for the gear shifting here in the middle console. This is a completely new element right there, and you have the P, the park mode right there, and then for the reverse or for the drive gear you put it back or push it forward. Very interesting. I haven't seen something like this yet. I mean, why not? You can put your hand on there right there. Other than that, it is the standard setup we also know from the other big Audi models, and probably it's good when you take a look at that just from the rear seat. The general setup, it will always be the case, 10.1 inch on the top part and 8.6 inch on the lower part. They also sometimes interact. It is a touch screen, you always have to wipe it clean, collect some fingerprints. It is somewhat haptical as well, so you don't just touch it like this and nothing happens. You really have to press the screen. For the temperature, I think that's a little bit distracting. And you also have, you know, seat cooling as you need it, because you will stick to the seats otherwise. Heated steering wheel, seat heating. And for example, when you put the GPS on the top part, which has a great resolution, and look how fast it is. So it's really a big CPU unit behind those vehicles here now, that everything is working so fast. When you, for example, enter a destination, then search for something, for example, then you can enter it on the lower part, for example, here in Köthenhorn. So, but if I want to go, for example, to Aarhus, for example, I can enter this one here and then see another R. Not sure why it's Maybe it's set on another. Yeah, it's set on Germany. That's why it's not finding Aarhus right there. But you can see how you can interact with writing on the lower pad. Oh, that was Aarhus. And then something appears on the top part. So when standing still, it's really a cool solution. When driving, it's sometimes a little bit distracting. We also have a pretty cool camera system here inside the studio. We cannot see so much. Also because the side door is open at the moment, but it will be the same 3D camera system. You can see here also have the visualization of the vehicle right there. Hey, this is maybe a good clue how the car will really look like. So probably someone will mention this as a time code, because this car here does not have camo paint. Psst, I just found it out, no one has to know. There's the light strip, side profile. Play that again. And now we continue with the rest, because the middle console is also very interesting. First of all, very fixedly attached, good build quality. And the very special thing is you can see behind this drive selector here, there's basically a gap. Also here and here, this is a floating element. This is a new design element to give you something special, also again with the ambient lighting. And then inside there's a 12-volt power supply and another shade where you can then put things in. And it is somewhat cool to have this floating element, but overall I think a little bit complicated that you have, you know, a gap right there, and then you have to reach in very deeply to, for example, access the bottles and stuff. So I think this is a little bit too much playing around. Or what do you think? Now the versatility check. As for the rear compartment, it is somewhat a long vehicle and I would expect a lot of legroom, and yes, you do have that. I could put the seat a little bit more upright as well, but there's already now, as I would be seating, still a lot of legroom left. That's also the advantage of an electric vehicle with, you know, long wheelbase. Don't have the middle tunnel and stuff. Headroom also pretty good. There will surely be also an optional panoramic roof. And well, on the middle part, you don't have the middle tunnel, so it's relatively flat here in the middle area. So you can also change seats. You can see here there's no big middle tunnel because the all-wheel drive is just separated with the motors. But then again, you have the thick element here with the third and fourth USB supply, and also the optional 4-zone AC. And then this, just the middle console element, then again reduces the space. So I think this would be something where they could have made this one disappear a little bit more and then really use the advantage of the electric vehicle. You can see how the middle tunnel disappears, but then again, you have to be small to be able to sit in here. My one favorite element is, by the way, always the illuminated seat belt holders. This is a pretty cool feature. And you can already flip the seat from here, like this. And I would say we should take a look at how it looks like from the trunk. And let me get outside here. So, and the trunk is normally 600 liters with this electric hatch. Here we go. And that's, you know, it's a little bit higher. We also have the batteries in the bottom of the car, but still a lot of room right there because you don't have to just push it all over the rear. So pretty flexible. You can also flip the seats from here like this and this. Have this cover here. You can also remove it totally. So you're pretty flexible. As for the loading area, you can also get a little bit flatter than if you put the head restraints up. And there's a extra trunk, another 60 liters, and a front trunk, which is also called Frank from the designers. Pretty funny. And you open it the same way next to the, the steering wheel column as you would do it from a normal one. And then we can also store, for example, some cable equipment right there. It gets a little bit darker now, sorry, but this is the optional cable equipment. And you can get different cables depending on what you want to plug in. And it's a good way to store it, then you don't have it all over the rear trunk. Now welcome to Thomas's driving lounge, the driving part of this exclusive preview, with me not driving today because I'm not allowed to yet. I hope I will be soon, but with this vehicle it is really interesting also to drive as a co-driver because we want to experience how the sound insulation is evolved, because that's, as I said earlier, one of the things Audi paid special attention to, and of course how in general it feels to be driven in the first all-electric Audi, especially since we recently had the Tesla Model X in the endurance test. And we'll soon also take a look at the Jaguar I-Pace, 3 cars then which are pretty similar in capacity, power output, and also somewhat in price. And then we can give you more details also on the comparison. And of course, one of the first great things is it's just a silent ride, especially when we are, for example, here stuck in traffic. That's something that is in common with all electric vehicles, of course, but you already feel when standing still that, you know, one of the core advantages, also the combustion engine Audi models have, the sound insulation. This is really well done. I can already tell you from standing still here, basically, because you hardly hear anything around you which is happening. Of course, this will be more relevant when we're driving faster very soon, but especially with the electric vehicles. If you think about people standing on the outside with normal passenger cars, it's about 25 kilometers an hour the limit, when the rolling noise of the tires is actually the dominant one and not the one of the engine. And with buses or trucks, it's about 50 kilometers from the outside. But when you're sitting on the inside, it's about 85 kilometers, when you really hear the difference then when the noise from the wind is actually stronger than the one from the engine. And I also experienced it, by the way, with the Smart 4.2 electric convertible, where you feel like when you're driving 70 kilometers an hour open top, and you feel like driving a bicycle with 70 kilometers an hour. That's really, really funny. And then just when you're going a little bit faster, then the wind noise really takes over everything. Of course, one thing with the electric Audi here as well, when you're just here in traffic and you have this stop and go, there are no emissions then, so locally reduced emissions. And it's also somehow relaxing and smooth, because when when the engine, for example, is going to start-stop mode, it's starting all over again, making noise. Then you roll a little bit to the front, the engine shuts down again, for example. Or also when the engine is running all the time. Here in this case, the electric motor doesn't care how often it's being in a stop-and-go situation. It doesn't matter at all. So that makes you also calm, both as a driver and as a co-driver, especially when you stuck in a traffic situation. Also, the very first time I can take a live view at those virtual mirrors, and you can see, if you compare it to a normal mirror, it is a little bit zoomed in. So it's a little bit like the American mirrors. Last week we were with BMW in the US, driving the new X4. And we had one US version and one EU spec, and the US spec always have those zoomed in normal mirrors. And that's somewhat the impression you get here from this camera, that it's more zoomed in than you would actually feel it. It doesn't give you then the most natural impression, but it can have advantages because you can sometimes see something clearer. The funny thing is that this image is adapting on the situation. For example, also when you driving backwards, for example, tilting a little bit down, like a normal mirror would be tilting down. Or also when you go faster, there's a so-called highway mode. I hope we'll soon be able to experience that when we go a little bit faster, then that the zoom factor is also changing. Also, those virtual mirrors are changing the way you hear the wind noise from the outside, because they're a little bit slimmer, therefore also more streamlined. So this is also inside the concept of the general noise reduction of this vehicle. So that's about traffic and standing still, and we'll join you again here with the driving mode when we finally get out of the Copenhagen traffic. So now we can finally see the road. Why don't you hit the throttle? Yeah, way to go. So you feel there's instant torque from the electric motors. We have two, one in the front axle, one in the rear axle, and overall system output is about 400 horsepower. Of course, that's abundance of power, and especially since the electric motors have the instant torque, you can directly feel it. At the same time, because it's an all-wheel drive, it is somehow smooth. You don't get too much pulled from the front or too much pushed from behind. You can really compare it also to other electric vehicles which have this all-wheel drive system. The battery will be about 95 kilowatt hours, as I said earlier. So we can also expect some realistic range figures, about 400 kilometers. So also, which is in this vehicle segment size at the moment at the industry standard. And we had one glimpse now at about 50, 60 kilometers something and you literally hear nothing from the outside. And one of the challenges was that the electric vehicles, they have more high frequency sounds, whereas the combustion engine have more low frequency sounds. And so the sound insulation also has to be changed according to that. But good thing for us is that it's really hard to insulate the vehicle against these low frequency sounds, and it is actually easier to do it against the high frequency sounds. So that's actually then good for you know, just for the things we hear, and adds in again to the feeling that it's more silent in this electric vehicle. It's also funny, by the way, that as a co-driver you can better see in the driver's left mirror. They can also see what's been happening. But the first impression is really a little bit creepy. We've seen it in concept vehicles, how that works, but never in this, you know, in a real driving situation. I think it really comes down to how you learn to drive with that and how you adapt to it. Because I feel I have a little bit of limited sight, you know, just from the size of the image. I'm not sure yet. So my first impression would be rather that I would stick with the classic ones, but that's often with new technology. That the first thing, yeah, you know, I'm not quite sure if I'm ready for that. Maybe you can get used to that if you drive it a little bit longer. And as I said earlier, it also has some advantages. You still have the classic mirror in the top part, so you can always also relate to that, at least what's next to you. And you will also have an assistant driving function for the blind spot monitor, whereas a normal side mirror would have, for example, a yellow triangle or something, or a yellow dot. Here we just saw that. Then there it is again. We have basically a yellow line around the camera image, then again taking over the part of the blind spot monitor. So you're not losing this function, still have that. So there's a fast car in front of us, but we are also a fast car, even if it maybe doesn't appear from the front. And it really gives you a great acceleration. But at the same time, you don't have this roaring engine sound. And if you ask me, if you do miss that, you know, of course, you know, I like also an F-Type V8 sound, something like that. But if you don't have it, you also don't miss it, because it just creates a very silent and sovereign feeling here. Suspension-wise, by the way, it is somewhat to be compared with, let's say, an Audi A6. So noise insulation-wise, you can also put it in that respect, or a Q7. But from the driving feeling, it's not really a feeling like a full-size SUV, but also not as a standard sedan. It's something in between. So it's, I would say, SUV crossover maybe in this direction. So not that high. In the Q7, for example, you more have this command driving feeling with a very high and upright seating position. Here it's a little bit less sporty than, for example, in a A6 sedan, but not that SUV-ish. So something in between, which is also again very interesting from the niche, because Audi has those SUVs and they have the sedans or the estates. And then there's, for example, an Audi A6 all-road, and this is where I see this driving feeling wise, maybe a little bit higher above that, above the A6 all-road. So that can also be maybe an argument from the whole concept. Of course, you needed the space in the lower ground for the big battery package you have in the underfloor. This also gives this vehicle a very low center of weight or center of gravity, so makes it basically also sportier than it appears. So if you compare this vehicle then to maybe a comparable size and normal combustion engine vehicle, this one here, because all of the weight of the battery is centered in the lower part, will be actually more agile to drive. And also a lot of stiff steel has been used for the chassis to support this overall feeling. Maybe can you do some slalom right and left a little bit?
Not too much.
Yeah. Here you feel there's a little bit have this progressive direct feeling of the steering wheel. I can already see that. Something we've been talking on a lot recently. How progressive do you do the steering? And there's also not too much tilting to the sides of the vehicle. So suspension-wise, you don't have this flying carpet effect. It's also not a very stiff, sporty suspension. Again, I would also suspension-wise compare it with, with the big MLB range, so A6, A7, A8. Maybe from the sporty character, probably even in the direction of the A7. By the way, talked about it also in the interior part with those digital gauges everywhere, which is standard on the left part, and here with the 12.3-inch screen. If we take a look here at the GPS, for example, more in detail. Now while driving, you can also pinch and zoom here. This is of course especially handy as the co-driver, although you can see everything is leaned towards the driver just a little bit, that the driver is able to see it a little bit better. However, as we have the touchscreen right there, the co-driver can also very well control it while driving, and it's not too much of an angle that you would be super excluded as the co-driver, for example. In the lower part, of course, there's a reason that we have this 2-zone or 3-zone AC, because you can always get the haptical feedback and then control it like this. Or as a driver, as I told you in some earlier reviews from the new bigger Audi models, you can also control it via voice. That's coming more and more, that you can also use the voice commands, set the temperature like this, because sometimes we get the feedback people are missing the turning and pressing knobs. I do sometimes too. But with the voice command you can maybe also have a good control over that without being too much distracted. So the overall driving feeling here, in on the first kilometers we could take with this car in our exclusive preview, it feels pretty much normal. That's probably a very important thing to a lot of potential customers, that you don't have a big transition from the cars to the all-electric vehicle. To me, it feels just better in a way that it is more silent, it's calmer, the speed, how you can apply it, how you feel it, is very smooth. Of course, as it has so much power, when the driver really hammers it, it is, as a performance car, as a co-driver you feel basically. So you should probably tell the driver, keep it simple, keep it calm, don't accelerate too hard, unless you may be a rally co-driver, so you already feel the power as a co-driver pretty much. But other than that, it's a normal refined Audi as we know it, just a little bit more silent, and definitely shows where the brand is also heading to as for the drivetrains, especially since diesels are not the most famous ones at the moment in some respects anyway. As for the range here, it will not replace yet someone who maybe has to drive 40,000 kilometers a year and being on the road every day for a very long time. But as long as you have the charging possibility at home or at work on a regular basis, this can really make total sense. And as we recently also experienced with other electric vehicle reviews. So to me, most important thing is actually the charging infrastructure. This will count for this vehicle as well. Audi is starting on also another project on this issue, where they try to offer the whole charging service as well. They basically take on this job for you. I really wonder if that's going to work. Maybe I'll try that out myself even at a later stage, because I at the moment still have a problem that I want to install some charging infrastructure in the basement garage, but the other owners won't comply with that because they are afraid of evil electricity. Well, that's for sure also one of the myths you have to uncloud with the electric mobility. There's nothing so bad with recharging vehicles, I can tell you. I've tried it a couple of times and I was not burned, and also the charging infrastructure did not collapse, but some people still think it does. Of course, it will be an issue when like 100 cars are charging at once in one place. Then you need a proper infrastructure for that. But you can buy that at any time. You just go to the next service provider of the infrastructure and say, I want 100 charging stations, and it's being done. You can get anything. You just have to pay for it, basically. So, some more rounds here, some more corners with the car. Good test definitely in the traffic, because the driving situation will be primarily also in the city for such an electric vehicle, as it makes especially more sense here than maybe, as I said earlier, if you have this, long-term commuting, for example. Since the German manufacturers are now also introducing those new supercharging station, there will be more and more coming all over Europe from this Ionity network. This could also be then a solution for longer motorway trips, for example, that you can also recharge with a DC fast charging when you have a stop right there. So pretty interesting, this first ride here in the Audi e-tron. And I want to hear your comments as well. What do you think about driving this vehicle? And soon, or the next time we see us here with this vehicle, I'll be for sure behind the steering wheel myself. And now to our conclusion for today with the Audi e-tron prototype, a very close prototype meanwhile. Well, from the exterior dimensions, it's the same dimension than, for example, Jaguar I-Pace, Tesla Model X in this direction. And so basically a full-size, SUV, to me it's a full-size crossover, something which comes close to an Audi A6 all-road, which is even a little bit higher. That's how I would describe it from, dimension-wise, interior, and also from the riding experience. Of course, you can use the advantages of an electric vehicle. For example, that you have more room in the middle seat, especially in the rear compartment. So the offering of room we have overall is pretty good. Then new technology details like the first serial production virtual mirrors. To me, it's a little bit playing around. At the moment, I'm not sure how I think about it in 2 years, but at the moment I will still stick with the normal mirrors. Would like to hear your opinion of that too. And driving experience already showed so far, although I could just be in the co-driver seat for today. It's a very calm riding experience like in an electric vehicle, and probably it's the most silent electric vehicle yet, because the sound insulation is the one key element that Audi has been working over now for over a decade, and this also applies here for the electric vehicle. And the combination is even more silent than before, so probably this one will be among the most unique selling factors of this vehicle. So, if you like this insight here, give us a thumbs up and also tune in to our next episode of Autogefühl, especially also when we take this one here with a final paint and also finally on the road.